The British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, had recently announced her resignation, making her the shortest-serving Prime Minister in the British history. Truss's resignation followed her government's proposed budget and ideas, which caused turmoil in financial and economic markets, a series of other resignations, and sackings in her government, as well as disciplinary and unity issues within the Conservative Party. Truss resigned as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom after only 45 days of formulating her political strategy. The position was then subsequently replaced by Rishi Sunak. The record was previously held by George Canning, who was the Prime Minister for only 119 days, back in 1827. In this video, we will see why and how the United Kingdom can keep changing Prime Ministers. Keep watching. Britain's Conservative Party has undergone 2 prime ministerial resignations since December 2019, and according to analysts, it seems like they cannot stay in government for another 2 years without holding a general election. Under British law, if a party can command a majority in Parliament, it can stay in power for up to 5 years before holding an election. Although the Conservative Party has suffered a series of defeats in recent by-elections, they still seem to be able to retain a majority in Parliament, and this means that the next British general election is likely to be held in January 2025 at the latest. On the 24th of October, 2022, Rishi Sunak, who is Boris Johnson's former finance minister, had won the race to become the leader of the Conservative Party, which eventually made him the new Prime Minister of Britain. Today, the UK is experiencing a critical political crisis, and in this year alone, there have been 3 prime ministers. The upheaval of the Tory political party has left the country reeling like a third world country, and it is the Westminster system practiced within the country, which allows the prime minister to be appointed without the mandate from the people. The difference between the UK, Britain, and England. The British Isles, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and England are terms that are often used interchangeably by the whole world to refer to countries which are among the world's greatest powers. The terms used are indeed confusing, and it is difficult to determine which group is intended to be addressed with those terms. United Kingdom, UK, is short for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Simply put, the UK is a country that includes 4 states, namely England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Prior to the existence of the UK, there were several important events that took place which became the basis for the formation of this sovereign territory. According to the UK History website, the term Great Britain does not actually refer to a country, but instead, it means a vast land. The word great is used because Britain is the largest island located in the British Isles, which includes the territories of England, Scotland, and Wales. Just like Scotland and Wales, England is also often considered a country, but it is not a sovereign territory. Instead, England is the largest state in terms of size and population, which is under the UK. Therefore, England plays an important role in the existence of the UK. Its capital, which is situated in London, was also appointed as the capital of the UK. The UK political system. In short, the UK is governed by a parliamentary system centered in London, and at the same time, it is also a country that practices a constitutional monarchy system. This means that the UK is a country governed by a king or queen who receives advice from the parliament. As a parliamentary democracy, the UK government is governed by a parliament that is elected by the people. The highest positions in the UK government are filled by directly elected members of parliament, MPs. Each state under the UK will be governed by an appointed minister and centered in their respective place. The Prime Minister is the most powerful person in the UK government, where he acts as the leader of his party as well as the head of government. The Prime Minister will appoint the cabinet and ministers in the UK government after he gets the King's assent. The cabinet's job is to make decisions on new policies, the implementation of existing policies, and ensure the smooth running of various government departments. Under normal circumstances, the Prime Minister of the UK is elected in a general election held every 5 years. The Conservative Party now has a strong majority in Parliament, with 358 out of 650 seats, after winning the 2019 general election under Boris Johnson's leadership. The greatness of the UK Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is responsible for all government policies and decisions. It is also the Prime Minister's duty to choose the government members who are known as ministers. Some special responsibilities also rest on the Prime Minister, such as deciding whether to shoot down hijacked or unidentified aircraft. He may also authorize the UK's use of nuclear weapons. The Prime Minister usually holds a weekly meeting with the King to brief him on government matters, whereby these meetings are held privately, and there is no official record of what was said. In terms of salary, the Prime Minister in the UK is entitled to a salary of around £164,080 according to the BBC report, which is £84,144 to be a Member of Parliament, plus a salary of £79,936 to be the Prime Minister. Why does the UK keep changing Prime Ministers? The Prime Minister admits his failure and resigns. Among the practices done by the Prime Minister in the UK political system is to admit the failure of their leadership and resign. Among the Prime Ministers who have admitted their failure and resigned is David Cameron, who resigned in 2016 after the UK voters chose to leave the European Union (EU) in a referendum. In the 2015 general election manifesto, the Conservative Party had promised to hold the referendum. Cameron had advocated for the UK to remain in the EU, but voters had chosen to leave for Brexit. Therefore, Cameron resigned because he failed to influence the voters. Next is Theresa May, who resigned in 2019 for failing to finalize the UK's exit from the EU. She lost several votes in Parliament, and her resignation was so that Parliament would support the Brexit deal. Boris Johnson resigned in 2022, when his cabinet ministers resigned one after another. It followed several scandals, including appointing an individual whom he knew had moral problems. Most people saw Johnson as a politician who is dishonest and has no integrity. Truss, who was then appointed in September 2022, resigned on October 20, 2022. She resigned because she had failed to manage the economy. Her Minister of Finance had presented a mini-budget that reduces taxes on those earning high incomes, without explaining how the loss of national income will be accommodated. The market did not take such move well, and among the effects was the pound value that plunged to its lowest level in the history. The four examples of prime ministers had resigned out of selflessness, as they knew they have become a burden to their party, and therefore chose to resign out of their free will. The attitude of ministers who speak up if they disagree. Among the events that accelerated the resignation of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister was the mass resignation of his cabinet ministers. On July 5th this year, Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, who is now appointed as the UK's newest Prime Minister, and Health Minister Sajid Javid, resigned over disagreements with Johnson. Between 5th and July 8th, more than 50 ministers and political appointees such as the Parliamentary Secretary resigned because they disagreed with the Prime Minister. While under Truss, Home Affairs Minister Sala Braverman resigned the day before Truss resigned. Although the minister had resigned for violating the rules held by a minister when using a private email to send official government documents to a member of Parliament, her resignation letter shows how divided the Truss administration was. Not only that, but Conservative MPs also was very vocal in publicly criticizing Truss. Not only did they criticize the Prime Minister, but they also openly demanded for Truss to resign. They are not afraid of being kicked out of the party or denied standing in the next general election. For them, the interests of the country and the interests of the people prevail over the interests of any individual or their party. In conclusion, what happens in the UK politics has its own good and bad. Normally, the UK does not actually need to keep changing its Prime Minister, frequently for a full 5-year term. However, when the Prime Minister changes faster in one term of the government, it is because of a major issue, which is the main factor in the failure of the administration of a Prime Minister. Nevertheless, the attitude of the UK Prime Minister who is responsible for leaving office because of his failure should be used as an example by leaders in other countries. Thank you for watching.